On today's show, what are the biggest questions that the Cavs are facing this year? How does Peyton Watson fit in? Is Jaylon Tyson going to take the next step? We'll discuss all that and so much more. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball. He and I have a nice chat about the Cleveland Cavaliers on this edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi again, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham, and I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over at my Substack, The Inside Shot, and you're listening to the latest edition of Locked On Cavs, where on today's show, I'm joined by Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball. My yearly check-in with Josh. We do this crossover once a year, and this is a different show than the one that you are used to listening to, because normally when you're tuned into Locked On Cavs, I'm the one leading the conversation, but the tables are turned on this edition because Josh is the one asking me the questions about the Cavs. We talk about the biggest questions facing this team. Is Jaylon Tyson going to step up? What should we expect out of Peyton Watson? Can Evan Mobley and Jared Allen continue to coexist? What's Donovan Mitchell got in store for the Cavs this season? We talk about all those things, plus a few more as well on this edition of the show. So in just a second, Josh is going to be the next voice that you hear leading us in. We have a great conversation. It's one that I do think you will enjoy if you're a Cavs fan. So as we get underway here, do me a favor. On YouTube, hit the thumbs up button and click that notification bell if you've not done so yet, and make sure you're subscribed wherever you might be getting your podcast. And now here's my conversation with Josh Lloyd.
Danny Cunningham is back on the show to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Danny, like I said in my intro, I'm glad we waited a little bit to do this. And one of the reasons we did put this off, we're going, maybe LeBron's going to come, but that didn't happen. But then a couple of days ago, we get the Cavs making their moves and starting to finalize out their roster. We'll talk more about those details soon, but what do you think overall with the team? Is this enough to push them further? Because it was disappointing conference finals last season. Does it push them further? Are they a legit contender with the moves that they have made now?
I think that they can be. I think it's something that we need to see happen first, right? Like, I think that we look at this and say, okay, I don't know that they're a better team than they were when they lost to the Knicks in 4 games last year. I certainly don't think that they're a worse team, but I think what the Peyton Watson acquisition did, what even the drafting of Malik Thomas did earlier this summer, which feels like forever ago with everything that kind of has or hasn't happened, might be a better way to put it, with the Cavaliers this year. I think that they've given themselves a pathway to being better, right? Like, they're very clearly making a bet that Peyton Watson is going to take his game to kind of that level we saw in Denver when Jokic and Murray were out for a stretch and he had kind of the reins of the offense. They're betting that that's going to happen more consistently. They're betting that James Harden, year 2 of him, and yes, James's kind of postseason stuff is what it is, but they're going to bet that having him in Cleveland for a full season, and as opposed to trying to microwave these things, a lot of these things that happen organically, that he's going to help Evan Mobley get better, that he's going to keep Jared Allen getting better, that he's going to fit better alongside Donovan Mitchell. So it's sort of like this Cavs offseason was almost like, in some ways, they're betting that what they have is good enough and that they'll get better in time, and also betting that Peyton Watson can be that guy to push them over the edge.
Let's take a look at what actually did change with this team heading into the season, with their off-season moves, and they did execute that sign and trade for Peyton Watson. I loved them drafting Malik Thomas, who honestly I had as a borderline lottery player, so like them trading out with Sacramento and still getting a guy that I think was a top 15 guy in this draft was pretty solid stuff. Ernest Udeh Jr. is there on a 2-way. Cam Whitmore maybe is there, I don't know. And then Mario Hezonja. I just want to talk about Mario Hezonja. There's a conspiracy theory going around with Mario Hezonja. I'm sure you've heard it, Danny, that the Cavs put a non-guarantee of November 15th on this deal because the only way he was able to get out of his contract in Europe was an NBA out, and he wanted us to change teams in Europe. So he signs this contract. It's non-guaranteed. They'll cut him early in the season, then he'll go back to Europe. Have you heard that conspiracy? Does that make sense to you that that's something they would do?
I've seen that conspiracy. And there was that conspiracy before we knew what his contract was, like, right? Like, it popped up from some outlets over in Europe. And listen, I have no idea who's reputable in Europe, who's not reputable in Europe. I don't follow European basketball closely enough to like know who the good reporters and who not the good reporters are. What I can tell you is, from my side of things, the Cavs are expecting Mario Hezonja to be part of the plans. But then it's that actions over words thing, right? Where you get that's what I had heard. And then it's, well, the contract does have that November 15th opt-out, as you mentioned. So what I think that is, and that actually could end up being a useful thing for the Cavs, considering the roster crunch, if the Hazonia stuff doesn't work out. But from all of the words that I've heard, and we'll see what this looks like when the ball starts bouncing on the floor, all of the words that I've heard, they expect Mario Hazonia to be part of the Cavs. They expect Mario Hazonia to be impactful for the Cavs, right? And he's had a really good stretch of play recently playing for his national team. We'll see how much of that, like he had 37 points the other day. We'll see how much of that is going to carry over to the NBA floor. But the contract, if nothing else, and maybe November 15th will come and go, and no one's going to remember in April that, oh yeah, this guy could have opted, or the Cavs could have cut him in November and not owed him any more money. Maybe we'll all just forget about that, because maybe Mario Hazonia will be a really good piece of that. But I do think it's probably a good thing for all sides that if this isn't working out, it's not something that needs to drag on. But I do think that the Cavs, as of right now, or at least as of what I've heard, are expecting it to work out.
They lose some decent players, guys who are all either starting or part of their rotation, like Max Strus, Dennis Schroeder, Keon Ellis, Dean Wade, all gone. And all of those guys, I think Schroeder started a couple of games with injuries, but all those guys were key pieces of their rotation. And yeah, when you look at the guys coming in, you can say Peyton Watson might be the best of that, but the volume of guys leaving is important. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the guard depth a little bit later on, but it is also worth remembering that they played their regular season last season without Max Strus for the most part. He wasn't really there. With Strus being a part of this Peyton Watson deal, how do you what do you think it's more of a bet on? Is it a bet on more Sam Merrill? Is it a bet on guys like Jaylon Tyson, who we'll touch on a little bit later on? Is it a bet on somebody else like Malik Thomas being legitimately just a part of the rotation, or it is the rival of Hazonia, or is that just the cost of business? Because there was plenty of talk about, hey, Strus is on the way out here, even before this trade went down. So what is the impetus behind a guy who was so good 2 years ago, being this seemingly just on the outskirts player?
I think and it's never one thing, right? I think part of it is he's an expiring contract and he's north of 30 years old. And typically when you have those things as a role player, like your time in some situations might be coming to an end. And I think everybody sort of recognized that. But I also think Jaylon Tyson is a big part of this too. Because as you mentioned, the Cavs went through basically the entire regular season last year without Max Strus. I believe he played in 12 regular season games, didn't make his season debut until March because of that Jones fracture that happened right around a year ago right now. And Jaylon Tyson really took that opportunity and ran with it. And then when the postseason arrived, Max is somebody that the Cavs knew they could count on. And I thought he had for the most part, really strong postseason for Cleveland. But that sort of squeezed Jaylon Tyson's minutes a little bit down. And Jaylon Tyson didn't get the same opportunity in the postseason that he got in the regular season, certainly. And I think that after what they saw from Tyson in year two, I think and I think this is a fair thing to expect, that he's going to take another step forward and be a little bit better in year three than he was in year two. Now, does that mean that he's among the league leaders shooting almost 45% from 3-point range again? I'm not so sure about that. Like, that might be something that is a little bit over his head. I still think he's a really good shooter, but I don't know that he's like best shooter in the league type of guy. But I think that they're expecting him to be a much bigger part of this roster, to be a much bigger part of what they do on a night in and night out basis. And this was a way to clear that space. And I think if that's the cost of doing business and you also get Peyton Watson out of it, it's a move the Cavs felt like they had to make.
Yeah, I think all of that is very, very reasonable. And I think Strus's age is a little bit really not underreported, but like, people don't realize how old he was coming into the league. Then he had a torn ACL right at the beginning and he sort of bounced around. Then he caught on, and then like he was with Boston and Chicago. Then he went to Miami. It's been all over the place. So let's go to a projected starting group with this team. Again, this is not anything that's particularly groundbreaking stuff, I don't think. Jim Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Peyton Watson, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, the most easiest group I think that you could find in terms of this is what the starting lineup is going to be. And unless injuries strike, I don't really see any other way they're going to do it. But I do want to use this little segment here just to talk about what you saw of the fit of Harden and Mitchell when they joined up at the end of the regular season, because both guys saw their numbers dip. We saw Mitchell's assist numbers dip. We saw Harden's usage fall off pretty significantly. How do you think those two, because Donovan Mitchell put up some of the best numbers of his career, and when Harden arrived, his shooting went through the roof, but like his touches, his assists all dropped down. Did you think that sort of distribution of how those two were being used, who's doing what, was successful, and it's how they're going to approach it heading into this next season?
I think it's hard to argue with what the results were, right? Like they were a much better team after James Harden arrived than before James Harden arrived. And Harden did arrive in the midst of one of the best stretches of basketball that the Cavs played all season. But I also think that they kind of recognized that what Donovan was doing while he was awesome kind of was something that you didn't want him to have to sustain, where there was kind of too much on his plate, where he was having to carry this roster on a night in, night out basis because there were so many injuries, right? Like this was a group that did not have its full rotation available for a single regular season game last year. I think the first time that its entire roster was available was game 3 against the Toronto Raptors in the first round, which winning 52 games and that being the reality of the situation, I think is an impressive thing. But I think part of it was they needed Donovan Mitchell to not have to carry that load. And I do think that giving the ball to James Harden more is something that helped Donovan in that area. And I also think it helped the bigs, right? Like you look at what Jared Allen was able to do in the month of February in particular. And part of that, Evan Mobley missed some of that month with the calf strain. So Jared Allen had more opportunity because there wasn't another big like Evan Mobley that needed to take up oxygen for him to share the floor with. But I think James Harden elevated him and made him better. And I think that we're going to see more of that stuff. And truthfully, like, not that I am in the business of giving advice to the Cavs because I'm not a basketball coach or a front office guy, but I think they might even be better served to pair James Harden with Evan Mobley at times and have James help to elevate Evan, because I think that he's got a ceiling that hasn't been touched yet. So I do think that what we saw from them, there are definitely some kinks that need to be worked out between James and Donovan, but I think for being able to pick up things in the middle of the season, they did a good job of it. I think they can do a better job of it. And I think that's what training camp, preseason, playing basketball from October through April is all about. But I think that they did about as good of a job as you could have expected during the regular season last year.
Well, James Harden definitely has experience in dealing with some sort of kinks. So we'll move on to talk about some other big questions about this team, but not before I tell you about Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another just sneaking its way in there for inventory, another for sales, but none of them talk to each other. That's stupid. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform, from sales and accounting to inventory and marketing. Everything works in one place. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. The Cleveland Cavaliers, for example, there were times, years ago, when Dan Gilbert was considered meddling and he was making decisions based on what he felt without giving the power to his front office. But something changed, and the Cavs have been one of the smoothest and well-run organizations over the past, decade almost, because everyone is pushing in the right direction, letting the people do what they need to do. It's like this software with Odoo. Make the thing do what it needs to do, but everyone talks, everyone communicates, and everyone pushes and does the thing in that same direction. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that is why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That is ODOO/lockedon. Talking Cavs, we're talking to Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavs, and that'll allow me to ask the first big question about this Cleveland Cavaliers team. And the first big question about this team is they bring in Peyton Watson. So this is a team that seemed to have just a lot of guards, a lot of shooting guards: Jaylon Tyson, Schroeder, Alice, Strus, Mitchell, Harden, without many forwards. So Watson comes in just to be that forward after they lose Dean Wade. But what does he bring? Because his big success was when a bunch of guys were out in Denver. His usage went up to like 27 or 28. Very hard to do that on this team with Mitchell, Harden, Mobley all around. So what is the expectation of what Peyton Watson brings to this Cavs team for this year?
I think the expectation is for him to be a really good defensive player that can kind of cover for a backcourt. And let's face it, Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, no one is confusing either of those guys with Gary Payton or Marcus Smart or whatever really good defensive guard you want to bring up. They're not getting confused or compared there. But he can cover some of those mistakes and kind of be a bridge to a really, really good defensive front court in Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. That's, I think, piece number one that the Cavs are really hoping for. And then piece number two is the three-point shooting. Shot 41% on threes last year. He's a really good shooter from the corners, which you do have to think is going to be an opportunity he's going to get. Now, I don't think the Cavs are going to just operate where it's like, hey, Peyton, go stand in the corner. I don't think that's what their offensive philosophy is going to be, but there are going to be some possessions that you can kind of envision where maybe James Harden is running a pick and roll with Evan Mobley, who's proven to be a pretty good passer in that pocket there. And you've got Peyton Watson in one corner and maybe Sam Merrill in the other corner. And okay, that's a really, really good offensive blueprint for success. And Peyton Watson, if he can shoot from beyond the arc the way that he did last year, and he's somebody who I think has improved as a shooter pretty consistently. He was, in his rookie year, he really didn't play enough to take a look at what that percentages were, but he went from just under 30% in his second year to 35% in his third year, 41% in his fourth year. And all the while his free throw percentage is also climbing every year too. So I think that's a good indicator, and I also think that there are going to be times where, let's face it, it's an 82 game season. Donovan Mitchell's not playing all 82 games. James Harden might, because he's been pretty durable. I don't think it would be in the Cavs' best interest to play him 82 times. But there are going to be moments where the Cavs should be able to say, hey, Peyton, here's the keys for tonight. Go run the offense. Go be the guy. And he proved last year in Denver, at least for small stretches, that he's capable of doing stuff like that. So I do think that there's going to be an expectation that when the Cavs are fully healthy, he's going to be in one role, but that he's able to elevate and be in a more high usage role on nights when maybe everybody's not available. He's able to take the reins of the offense and sort of show off who he's capable and who he's going to be a couple years from now.
People, when this trade went down, they were like, oh no, Peyton Watson's going to lose a whole bunch of stuff now in Cleveland. I go, but I think his minutes stability rises quite a bit here. Like, he's locked in as a starter. He's playing 30 plus without any question. Like, in his usage from his numbers last season probably does go down. He was at 21 usage for the season, 27 in those big moments, and maybe he's at 20 usage or a 19 usage guy, but there'll be more stability in his role, which is something that will be interesting to see how it plays out on this new team. The second question that I do want to ask you, Danny Cunningham, about this Cavs team is the Mobley and Allen pairing. We have, no matter when I talk Cavs, this is a question that comes up. Well, are they going to trade one of them? And is Mobley better at center and all this sort of stuff? And then you see these situations where Allen's minutes come down and he sits out fourth quarters. And there's a lot of this sort of thing. Now, I think I want to focus a little bit more on Evan Mobley because there's a lot of talk that I hear around many areas, whether it's fantasy or real life, talking about Mobley. Oh, he's so bad. He's stagnated. He was really terrible last season. He's just not that guy they think he was. And I go, okay, he's 12 months removed from being the defensive player of the year. And yeah, some of his offensive stuff didn't necessarily grow, but how do you view what Mobley did last season? Does he need Jarrett Allen next to him? Or do you just think that, there is a little bit more that we're going to get out of him?
I don't think that he needs Jarrett Allen next to him. I think that makes him better defensively. I think having Jarrett Allen next to Evan Mobley makes Evan a better defensive player because instead of having to be the only rim protector on the floor, he's then able to be somebody that can roam, that can be disruptive in a lot of areas, that can sort of play on the weak side a little bit more. So I do think that having Jarrett Allen defensively next to him is a benefit. Offensively, he needs to get better. And that's kind of the thing I keep coming back to. And I wonder, the thing I'm most curious about is how impactful those calf injuries were for Evan Mobley, because he missed a couple of different stretches. He came back, he missed 2 weeks. I think it might actually been 16 days, if I'm not mistaken, that he missed with a calf strain. And he came back early and played on Christmas Day, came off the bench on Christmas Day against the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden. And then he was on a bit of a minutes restriction after that. And he played well, but he didn't necessarily look like himself. And then I think this was in early February or late January. It was right around the time of the trade deadline.
26th of January was his last game before that second injury.
Yeah, he had another calf injury. And it's just I wonder if he was ever able to truly get in the rhythm that he wanted to get into. And I thought he looked a little bit better in the postseason than he did a regular season, which I do think is a good sign. But I also think it's fair to wonder, does Evan Mobley have what it takes to get to the next step offensively? He's really good. I think he's got a really, really high floor as a basketball player. I think he is a guy that no matter what situation he's going to be in, he's going to help you win basketball games because of just how good he is defensively. But the offensive stuff, I think he's got the tools. The question is whether or not he can actually put it together. And I think this year's a really, really big year for him. I think he's capable of doing that with Jarrett Allen on the floor. I think it might be easier without Jarrett Allen on the floor, offensively, certainly. But he, to me, is the guy that is maybe not going to determine just how good the Cavs are going to be. But if Evan Mobley goes back to being the guy he was 2 years ago when you mentioned he was Defensive Player of the Year, he was second team All-NBA. If he's that guy again, the Cavs are going to be really, really good in a title contender. If he's the guy he was last year, then I think you have some serious questions next summer.
Let's talk about the last big question that I've got about this team. And we talked about losing players, and they lost Dean Wade, Strus, Schroeder, Alice, the main big contributors on this squad. So that's a lot of guards gone. There's very little, and this has always been the case, like their backup big man is like Thomas Bryant, which is like not very good. So what's more worrying? Is it not really having an established backup center, or is it the fact that your backup point guard is probably not really a point guard? And we're going to talk a bit Jaylon Tyson a little bit later, but like I know Harden and Mitchell can interchange it, but the problem is one of those guys goes down, then like, you know, is Tyrese Proctor just a regular part of it? So what's more troubling, losing all of those guard ball handlers or the lack of depth big men?
I think the more troubling thing is the lack of depth in the front court. Because Evan Mobley, you know, we just talked about, like, he's a really good player. Jared Allen is who he is, which I think is just that level right below being an all-star type of guy. That's who I think Jared Allen is pretty consistently. But only having Thomas Bryant to rely upon beyond those guys, and Thomas Bryant has had some moments, and he's somebody that he's going to give you everything he's got when he's out there. Doesn't mean it's always going to be good, though. Like that to me, I think is a bigger concern. And I don't know what the answer to that is going to be for the Cavs. Like you mentioned earlier in the show, they have Ernest Udeh Jr. on a 2-way contract. Like, I don't think he's somebody that should be part of their plans as far as that goes this year. Like, that's asking an awful lot of a rookie to step into that type of role. And this is the area where I really think losing Dean Wade is important, because at times they played Dean Wade at the 5 last year when Jarrett was hurt because he had that knee injury late in the season, when Evan was hurt with the calf injuries. Like, they were never starting games like that, and they weren't playing the majority of games like that. And they would even play Thomas Bryant in those games. But when they needed to, they said, hey, we just need a little bit more offensive punch. They could put Dean Wade at the 5. And that was a lineup that had a lot of success for the Cavs. Not having that lever for Kenny Atkinson to pull, I think, is a really, really curious thing, how he's going to handle that, what the Cavs are going to look like. So I'll go there. And part of it too is I just think I have more trust in some of the guys in the backcourt. And, you know, we mentioned Malik Thomas a little bit earlier. I don't know what he's going to be, and he's 20 years old, and I think his body needs a little bit of work, but he's got a really high ceiling, in my opinion. I'm high on Tyrese Proctor. The Cavs like Tyrese Proctor. They think he's going to be a good player after being a second-round pick last season. Craig Porter Jr. is another guy that, like, he's been in the league for 4 years, and it's kind of now or never as to whether or not he's going to be a rotational guy. So I just think that while I don't necessarily know that there's one guy I look at in the backcourt and say, yeah, if James Harden goes down, this guy can pick up the slack, or this guy will pick up the slack. But I know that there are options where if I look at Jared Allen's out for months, like, Evan Mobley's playing center, but after that, it's Thomas Bryant and no one else. So I think the answer there is the more concerning thing is the big man depth.
Yeah, I think that's true. Thomas Bryant, again, can have these games that look great, and then he's just completely lost in other ones with bad shooting and non-existent defense, and you don't have that presence there. Again, it's not about, Mobley can step in for Jared Allen, but then who steps in for Mobley? And that's, everyone is pushed into different positions, so it does become troubling. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about Jaylon Tyson in a sec. Before we do that, though, today's episode, it's brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think that you know what, you don't have to be a baseball fan, but if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. And if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. And best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep, and now you get the chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. Maybe you want to look at Australia's best current baseball player who plays in Cleveland, Travis Bazzana. He's not really a big home run pop guy, but, maybe you've just got that national pride for some reason if you live in America and love Australian baseball players. But Travis Bazzana. Maybe you look at Jose Ramirez. Any Cleveland guy, anyone you want to look at, who you think's going to hit a homer, pick him in Daily Dingers, lock it in, and maybe you do get that profit boost. So you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of MLB, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, let's ask the question. of who is changing the ceiling of this team. We know what Mitchell does. We know Jim Harden. We know Evan Mobley there. But given the guys that have left the team, it is a big responsibility that is placed on third-year player Jaylon Tyson, Danny. Now, you touched on it already. And I don't think many people would necessarily know that he shot 45% on his threes. He was really strong early in the season, especially when Strus was out, Schroeder wasn't there, Alice wasn't there, Harden wasn't there, Garland was injured, and he was doing a lot. And then everyone came back and everything filtered down. And his efficiency also disappeared because he was shooting like 48% on threes early on. And his true shooting was like under league average over the last third of the season. So I like Jaylon Tyson as a player. I don't know how reliable he is as a backup point guard. You're right, Craig Porter can do some of that as well. But look, what do you need to see out of Tyson this season to push them into that next tier up? Like, what is the next step for him in year 3?
I think it needs to be continuing who he was in the first half of the season for the Cavs. Now, like I said, the shooting stuff, 48% is, I don't think, a sustainable number for most guys that have ever played basketball, not Jaylon Tyson. But I think above 40% is somewhere that he could be. And I think it's that. I do think that there's a little bit more of creation there that he can tap into. And you have to think back to who he was in college at Cal playing for Mark Madsen, where he did everything for that Cal team that, yes, wasn't very good, but he had to do everything because the rest of that roster around him was horrible. So I do think that there's some of that, like as a secondary creator. I'm not saying play backup point guard, but as a secondary creator on the floor with one of Mitchell or Harden. And I think it's also being a little bit of a better defender. Like, I think he's a very capable defender. I don't think he is a great defender, but I think that he's somebody that if you can put him, especially if he's on the floor with Peyton Watson at times, say, hey, we're going to put Jaylon Tyson on the second best offensive threat that the opponent has. Jaylon needs to be able to handle that role. And I think if those things come true, and if he's somebody that takes that step and can comfortably average 15 to 16 points a game on fairly good efficiency, then I think you can look at Jaylon Tyson and say, okay, he's not there yet, but is there a pathway once the James Harden stuff is over in a couple of years, because James is turning 37 this week? Is there a pathway to Jaylon Tyson or Peyton Watson becoming an all-star one day? And I think if you can say yes to one or both of those about those guys this year, then I think the ceiling is much higher for the Cavs this season and moving forward, because I think if those two bets, and they're both bets, they're different bets, but if those two bets hit, the Cavs are going to have something they've not had in a long time, which is really, really strong wing play between Watson and Tyson. And I think that would then elevate them to where they think they can be.
His shooting was ridiculous, but it was really bad in the playoffs especially. And there's a lot that needs to happen because he's wasn't on ball very much last season. His passing turnover rate was really quite high. His assist numbers were pretty low. But again, what we saw from him year 2 compared to year 1 was a significant improvement. And I do think he's got some ball handling ability. I'd like to see where it goes. But I guess my worry with it is if you're relying upon that, or that means you need to play Craig Porter Jr. 20 minutes a night, and he's got some iffy offensive game outside of the defensively, he's awesome. But like the shooting and the other offensive stuff, there can be problems there. I'm hoping that Jaylon Tyson can do it. But again, if you just show different snapshots of the season, you say, wow, this guy's unbelievable. You go, well, why is this guy even playing at this point? He should be the 10th or 11th man, because it was such a stark difference. And some of it was players returning, but he also just did the thing is when everyone was out, he was awesome. When everyone came back, everything fell away. And that does make it hard for me to, I guess, analyze where he's going to be, because everything looks amplified and then turned down by 1,000,000% when the minutes dropped, and they didn't drop because he played poorly, that was irrespective of it. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But I'd like to see it happen for more than 45, 50 games in terms of that shooting. Who do you think feels the most pressure on this team if things don't go well? Like, we know Donovan Mitchell signed that very, very large contract, which is probably going to look horrible. Like, it's going to be him and Devin Booker with the worst contracts in the NBA in a couple of years' time, probably. Is it Kobe Altman? Is it Kenny Atkinson? Like, who's going to be under the most pressure this season?
I think it is Kenny Atkinson right now. And then I think there are guys, like I think Evan Mobley is there because his contract is very, very high as well. I think Donovan's in that conversation. But I think when you look at Kenny Atkinson, who has, yes, helped this team get to the conference finals, I think he said some things that maybe didn't come across the way that he hoped during that series against the Knicks, certainly. And everybody knows what I'm talking about there. But I think that the Cavs have given Kenny the tools to go out there and turn this team, which is really talented, which I think has one of the best starting fives in basketball, turn this group into a championship roster, turn this group into a championship team, right? Which those are two different things, but he can pull the right levers and build a winner. And like, I think the team 2 years ago that won 64 games was a championship contender, and they got injured at the right time. The Darius Garland toe injury really submarined that season for them. But I think Kenny Atkinson is under a lot of pressure going into this year. Like if the Cavs start off this upcoming season the way they started off last season, where they're around 500 at Christmas, I'm not so sure that seat under Kenny is going to be anything other than really hot. And then I think there's pressure on Donovan Mitchell because he's committed to this city. He wants to be the guy on a team that can win a title. Go out and do it. And I also think there's pressure on Ivan Mobley. When you're a top pick, when you're getting that max contract that he's on, you've got to provide like a max player. And last year he didn't. He's capable of doing it, certainly. But I think there's pressure on all three of those guys.
Maybe they can bring back John Beeline if things don't go well for Kenny Atkinson.
I don't think that one's in the cards.
I don't think so either. Let's get to the final part of what we want to talk about here, and that is you giving us a season win prediction. Danny Cunningham, I will not hold you to this long term, but where are you at? We're sitting a week or maybe less than a week into the Peyton Watson. It's like 4 or 5 days to Peyton Watson join the team. How many wins do you think this team is getting?
I think they're going to be a team that does win 50-plus games again. I think 51, 52, 53, somewhere in that neighborhood is where they will be. And I think that they are going to end up being a better team than the team they were last year, which won 52 games. But I don't think they'll have a record maybe that necessarily reflects that, because when you look at the Eastern Conference being better, that has to matter in this conversation. And I also think you look at their schedule. They have a stretch, Josh, from December 23rd until February 6th, which is a long time, where they don't play back-to-back games in the same city. They don't have consecutive home games. They don't have consecutive road games, like 2 games in LA or 2 games in New York against Brooklyn and the Knicks. Like they don't have that at all. They're traveling basically every other day for a month and a half. And I think that is something that could wear on them a little bit. So I think because of that they will be a team that is better than what their record says, but I think they'll be just north of 50 wins.
I think they're going to be good, and they're just another name to add into that mix with New York, with Philadelphia, with Boston, with Indiana, with Miami, with a bunch of these teams in the East that a team could be first, they could be sixth, and the difference might be 2 games, it might be 3 games. It is going to be an intriguing battle to see all of this stuff play out across the season. The Cavs, no matter what you think of what happened with Evan Mobley and the playoffs and the moves they made, they're going for it. They are making moves, and they have been for the last 2 to 3 years. We're trading for Donovan Mitchell. We're trading for James Harden. We are trading for Peyton Watson. They are going for these moves. They are all in on trying to bring LeBron back as well. They are going for it, and we want to see teams go for it, which is exactly what is happening, and that is going to be exciting for the Cavs fans. Danny, and you're going to cover it excitingly for us over on Locked On Cavs all throughout this preseason, into the season, and hopefully for you guys all the way through toward the end of June. Thank you again for coming on to Locked On Fantasy Basketball and talking about the Cavs, and good luck for the season.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you for having me. Really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Josh and I. Again, a little bit of a different show, not something that you should get used to hearing, because when we are back again next, we will continue Locked On Cavs the way you know it. But I do hope that you enjoyed me chatting with Josh about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So as we get out of here, please do me a favor. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show on Apple, on Spotify, or even on YouTube as well. And if you're watching it, as we get out of here, a thumbs up button click and a notification bell click. That goes a long way towards helping this show, Locked On Cavs, grow. And I will talk to you a little bit later, so much more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.